Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to today's session. Thank you for joining us today. This is a very important conversation on why some organizations win with AI and most don't. I'm Srishti and I'll be your host for today's session. Over the last few years, AI has moved from experimentation to expectations. Boards are asking about it, leaders are funding it, teams are piloting it. And yet, despite similar tools, budgets, and access to technology, results across organizations looks dramatically uneven. Some organizations are creating real compounding value with AI, others are stuck in pilots, stalled adoption, or unclear ROI. Today's session is not about tools, platforms, or demos. It's about why AI success is fundamentally a leadership and operating model challenge, and what separates organizations that scale AI sustainably from those that don't. Once again, a very warm welcome to today's session. We are glad to have you all here from across the world. Today, we'll explore the same, and to guide us through this discussion, we are joined by two leaders who have spent years working at the intersection of AI, transformation, and real world adoption. First, I'm pleased to welcome Mr. Ben Watson, who brings a strong commercial and enterprise lens to AI adoption. Ben works closely with organizations that are serious about moving AI beyond experimentation and into real, scalable business impact. His, bu- his experience sits exactly at the intersection where many AI initiatives succeed or fail, which is leadership alignment, operating models, and execution at scale. What makes Ben's perspective especially relevant to Adoptify AI's mission is his focus on how organizations operationalize AI, not just invest in it. He understands why some enterprises translate AI ambition into measurable outcomes while others struggle despite having similar tools and budgets. Today, Ben will help us unpack why AI success is less about technology choices and more about how organizations are structured to adopt and sustain change. Joining us is Chintan Dave, who brings a deep technology and systems thinking perspective to AI transformation journey. Chintan has spent years working across emerging technologies and enterprise environments, helping organizations design AI strategies that are robust, scalable, and future ready. His works align closely with our belief that sustainable AI adoption requires more than pilots or point solutions. It requires intentional design of systems, governance, and decision making frameworks. In today's session, Chintan will share insights into why organizations that treat AI as a standalone initiative often hit a ceiling and what it takes to build AI as a long term organizational capability rather than a short term project. With this, I'll hand over the stage to Ben and Chintan.
Perfect. Thank you. Dave, good to see you again. We get to do a webinar
Good to
again.
see
This
you
is
again.
awesome.
Absolutely, Ben.
All right. So, a couple of things. One is you're going to get access to a recording of this. You're also going to get a certificate of attendance for everyone here. It's a big audience we have with us here today. So we have some people helping us out in the chat so that Dave and I can focus on our presentation. Probably the key thing that I want to point out is one, the role that Dave and I play. We work for an organization called Starter, and Starter is made up of several different portfolio companies, one of which is Adoptify AI. The other ones are involved in AI training, instructor-led, self-paced e-learning, AI certifications, and all the rest. The reason why I bring that up is it's really interesting because Dave and I are lucky enough to sit at this intersection of all the things happening, right? We work with thousands of companies around the world who are all at different stages of their AI readiness journey, right? They may be deploying AI or evaluating it or rolling it out or scaling it and things like this. This allows us really to see what works and what doesn't work. And this is the goal of the of today's session is to kind of pass along kind of those best practices, right? Now, Dave, I would say, congratulations, because you recently were promoted to our Chief Technology Officer. So, congrats. That's awesome.
Thank you
So,
so much, Ben. And absolutely, like Ben has suggested, we live in the heart of the problem the orgs are facing, whether they are starting the journey versus whether they are, thinking about the adaptification. And, Ben is going to kick off and give us the deep dive on how we are planning this session so that you all can connect the dots first. Thank you so much, Ben.
perfect. All right. So for those that are keeping track, we got 25 slides and we got about 55 minutes to take you guys through it. So any questions you have, pop them into the chat and all the rest. Contact, follow-up information. Of course, we'll be at the end. But we want you to walk away with thinking about how to view, AI readiness in a new way, right? So we're going to go through kind of three sections as I think about it, three blocks, right? How to diagnose and realize why the effectiveness of AI is so uneven. It's not a simple thing to do. Why is that? What is a potential solution? I'm using the word operating system in a very deliberate way, right? Because the way we need to think about AI is it's not a standard technology rollout. It's not like rolling out Office 365. It's much more complex than that. And it also involves, not just a technology rollout, but also getting the people ready for it. So put those two things together and think about it more as an operating model or an operating system, something that you need to systematically put into place and maintain. It's not a one and done. And then the third section is, really getting into some of the numbers and some examples of, what does a baseline business case look like? What's the way to think about the return on investment, right? We don't want this to be an abstract side of things. So hopefully out of those three things, you're going to get some value out of this session today. Now, let me tee some things up. Dave, you jump in whenever I say something wrong, okay? But it is, every leader when we meet with them is basically kind of saying the same thing, which is, look, we went out, we bought the technology, we ran the training, right? We did the pilots, and you know what? Not much has changed, right? It is funny. Three meetings I had just late last week, right? One with a financial institution, one a big retail operator, another a hospitality organization. All were saying the same thing, which is, whether they're you know buying Microsoft Copilot or the enterprise version of ChatGPT, or Google Gemini and stuff. It's like we're doing it the way we did before in terms of rolling out the new technologies and training people, and nothing. It's just not sticking. Like why is that? And that's kind of the question we want to unpack today, right? Now, again, as a reminder, everyone, when, we all do our pilots, right? The pilots is a pilot, right? It's to go and validate, whether or not this thing works in a small, controlled environment, right? And what it does is it allows you to test out the various assumptions and configurations and all the rest, right? It doesn't prove that it's going to scale, right? It's just an experiment, right? And we never like to call experiments when we work for companies, right? So we call them pilots, right? But some of the things when it comes around to AI is thinking about um, you know uh, why isn't it delivering what we had expected, right? So again, like I was saying, right, the pilots prove the value, but the scaling doesn't happen. Okay. And the root cause isn't technical, right? I mean, the pilots themselves, right? most of our IT teams, right, inside our companies, they're used to doing technical pilots. I mean, it's a little tricky, right, with AI because, AI, because it's such a variable tool, right? You don't always know what you're going to get out of the output of using, a tool. It's not like Microsoft PowerPoint, right? How you use it determines the output that you're going to get. Um, so things like governance becomes, really important, right? More so than ever, understanding your baselines, right? So you can do your measurement. Again, good pilots, they usually kind of think about where we are and where we want to be, right? But governance, when it comes to AI, the acceptable use policies, how to make sure the tool is used effectively. The opposite of that is making sure the tool isn't abused or used in wrong ways, right? And then the other thing, and I love this part, is the way AI is used varies by role. I cannot stress this enough, right? This is, by gosh, if there's one thing you want to walk away from this thing is AI, doesn't matter the technology using, whether it's Gen AI or anything else, it will be used differently by people in different roles. And this is the magic of AI, and this is the downside of AI. Someone using, let's just, Microsoft Copilot, right? I'm in the legal department, I'm in the marketing department. I'm going to use that tool differently, right? This really has been a painful lesson for enterprises to learn. It's one of the reasons why how effective their AI deployment and usage is varies because the way it gets used varies as well, right? And it used to be you could go and, roll out the technology and everyone gets access to the training. Maybe it's instructor led, maybe, it's self-paced or a combination of the two of them. But in the end, it's kind of generic training. It doesn't work with AI, right? It doesn't work. The way you think about AI, the way you talk to AI, the way you use AI varies by role. The way accountants think about AI is quite different than people in marketing or legal or in finance and stuff. Dave, what's your thoughts on this?
Absolutely, Ben. And you rightly mentioned that AI is role-based, AI is personalized. So, what got us here will not get us there in the world of AI as well. So it's extremely important that we understand the most important thing about the pilots. So we don't state the pilots, and if we don't want to state the pilots, we need to know that what we need to change. And to know what we need to change, we would need to understand how we are going to consume an AI for each role. Because the problem that we are solving here, if we want to scale, we definitely want to need to know that what workflows we are going to automate, how they are going to get automated, how much investment we will need to know, and what is the North Star of it. So it's extremely important that we understand the scale metrics, as we say, and like Ben has rightly mentioned about the personalization and role based, we need to plan that each role we are aligning an AI, we know what problem we are trying to solve for them. So AI is becoming more personalized, the adoption will become more personalized as well.
Yeah, excellent points. And so let's unpack this a little bit more, right? So one is, everyone starts with a pilot, and we kind of said, look, you got to think about pilots in a different way. It's not the traditional way of thinking about a pilot, right? It's you need to think about governance, right? You need to think about, even the training component. Now, often when you do pilots, right? Pilots usually are done initially with the technical teams, right? So of course they know how to use the tools and all the rest. Pilots are often viewed as a technical validation, and I think this is what we're trying to highlight here is, all the results, and we throw up MIT as an example, is it's actually the tale of two journeys. There's the technical journey, right? There's the organizational rolling out of the technology, and then there's the people journey as well. The two things need to work together. So, whenever I think about this, right, often people are like, what's the biggest barrier, right? That people are facing, right? Employees don't know how to use it. The workflows weren't redesigned. The leaders can't measure their value. There's risk and governance. The reality, it's all of those different things. Now, Dave, what do you see on my screen right now? What's the title of my slide?
The title of the slide says, "What's the biggest AI adoption barrier in your organization?"
Exactly. It's all of these,
Yeah,
right? And you have to overcome all of these in order to make the adoption of AI effective, right? You have to have the employees know how to use it relative to their role, right? The nice thing is AI can be used by everyone across the enterprise. The reality is many of those people, especially those in those professional roles, the non-technical roles, they've never been exposed to AI. They don't even know what it is, right? Like, the executive team is like, oh, AI, is going to increase productivity. The legal person and the marketing person and even the receptionist is like, I don't know what it is, right? And I don't know how it relates to my role. How does people in my profession use it, right? Then at the team level, right? Teams work on workflows, right? We all may understand how to do things and how to use AI effectively, but if you're not adapting your workflows within your teams and across your teams, you're not getting the value. Leaders, the way you measure things is differently, right? It's not just the number of people using the license, right? It's kind of like, I have a thousand licenses and 80% of people are using it, 3 times a week. So I have a 80% adoption rate. That's not the way you measure the value, right? You're just measuring the usage, not the improvement in productivity. And then increasingly, this last one, man, this popped up more and more. I don't know if you saw it on your calls, Dave, but on mine, people started to realize that AI is a very powerful tool and it can be used for good and it can be misused. And what this means is they have to think more so than ever around what is the risk if people don't know how to use AI effectively? What is the downside of not training people, right? Well, that's a classic one. But also the governance around it, right? I mentioned earlier this notion of acceptable use policies, right? AUPs, right? Another acronym, right? What is the way you should be using this tool? How should you be using it? How should you not be using it? Risk and governance and compliance and regulatory concerns and all the rest, that fourth bucket is really starting to pop up, more and more. So those four things, those are your stumbling stones on your journey. These are things you can trip over. And if you're not aware of these things, you're going to spend a lot of money on the technology and not get the ROI that you want. Now, Dave, I'm going to hand things over to you because one, people are probably bored listening to me already because they're like, yeah, I get it. Take us through some of the realities of some of the things that we were seeing.
absolutely. So, you see the big numbers. I don't want to bore you with the numbers, but the problem is that, hey, let's the AI problem. Let's do the investment. Let's do the investment and, then we'll have an AI onboarding set. That's just one part of it, Ben, like you mentioned. You hire 20 tools, you hire like 15 agents, you deployed multiple workflows. The investment will only tap in is that the AI is no longer a pilot or innovation expense. It has to become a recurring operating plan, similar to we do ERPs or CRMs, etc. The point that I'm trying to make is the figures that we see in the screen and the other numbers you'll be seeing while we are investing a lot of money, security and compliance, data readiness, change management, implementation support. There are additional key metrics are there which actually makes the AI investment aligned if we are trying to scale it. That means it's becoming clear that do we have access is not going to solve, right? Are we getting measurable revenue, ROI, or relative to what we are investing? Do we have a crystal clear clarity on like what Microsoft even mentions in their documentation? Like, do you have an impact? Are people of using it? The word the AI investment reality is talking about is an impact and adoption. So if you're talking about impact and adoption, the impact says that you have a number of license, how effectively the licenses are being used for what roles and use cases. The adoption says that, hey, you have the number of licenses. Are you using the number of licenses? And these are the two sides of the coin. You need to know that once we invest in the tools, the adoption is the key matrix, and then the impact is extremely important matrix as well. And once we have
Very
the adoption and impact, we would be able to scale this to the next level by actually identifying that what are my pain points. So if you go to the orgs and you have already gone to many calls, Ben, the org says, hey, I have a license, these people are using it. I don't have the visibility. And we'll say, hey, are you having the eruption? They'll say, yeah, everybody's using the Copilot, they're using the ChatGPT, etc., for summarizing the meetings. Ben, what's your thoughts? Am I going on the right track on the
I don't know.
numbers?
I mean, one, right? Like I'll just flip back, right? Like, wow, it's really expensive, right? When you add up all these things, right? And,
Correct.
and it's, a 2,000 person company spending $12 million on, as an example, Microsoft Copilot. It's kind of like an iceberg. There's a lot of these other hidden costs, right? So this
Yeah,
is just like, wow, we're going to spend a lot of money. 2,000, 5,000, 10,000. It's a lot of money.
yeah,
Um, but like you said, right? And this is the slide that I like, Dave, is and they get stuck on their journey, right? It sounds good, they're spending the money, but they're stuck, right? Take
yeah.
us through what this slide means.
Absolutely. So if you see the numbers and the Gartner's forecast, the most common reason cited by the Gartners that it includes unclear or unproven business value, right? A weak governance, a data quality and readiness, an escalating cost organizing the attempt to scale the AI to the next level, and an enterprise-wide scaling if we need to do, we need to understand approximately 30% of the generative AI project will be, they will be haywire if it is not planned properly. That means what? If you really need the true AI maturity, which everybody wants, only a small fraction of organization report is not going to help us. We would need to go all in with all the roles that we have it. And then we need to have a paradox that, hey, what are my high level of experimentation? What's my growth investment would be? And what's my limited but a later stage a success scale would look like? So AI will work in pilots. What fail is scaling without a proper governance, measurement, and workflow integration. And that's the
Interesting.
key number that we are seeing here from the Gartners as well. Ben, what's your thoughts?
Well, I mean, look at some of these stats, right? Because it used to be a couple of months ago, right? Some reports come out, and it's like the majority of AI pilots are failing, right? And
Yeah.
there's such a clickbait, like, oh, it sounds so easy, right? And the reality is, it's not that simple, right? The reality is they're not failing, they're stuck, right? And they're stuck because one, they didn't map out their journey, right? So they don't know how to measure these things. And then the reality is, like you were just saying, the way to get out of the pilot into, deployment and operationalizing this is you got to do things like you're saying around the governance and the reporting. Now, look at this, 70%, right? AI pilots, they're reporting benefits, right? Um, but they're kind of stuck in scaling it out, and only a few have actually managed to roll out do that full rollout. So it's really interesting. I think again that word is stuck. And how do you get yourself out of stuck? Everyone's in the early stages of this AI journey. The first stage that you go through is typically after evaluation is you do a pilot. How do we help get these people out of the pilot? What does success look like? So, Dave, what about this one?
Absolutely. So, they call it the cost of, you know, taking it to the next level. Like you have the numbers, what's the problem is, we need to understand that this cost is extremely important. In the simple term, we call it the opportunity cost. You don't want to miss out on the things that you can achieve while you're actually making the grade enterprise grade adoption ready, right? The number says, significant share of AI program remains at the stuck in the pilot stage for extended periods. And that's a lot of cost. Even though the orgs have number of licenses, you'd see the use case doesn't scale. They don't know. Even the business analyst talks to the people. They identify the workflows. It becomes a kind of a shift that we need to make where we are actually seeing the huge value leakage. Now, when you talk about this, the important is that it's not at all a technology failure, right? AI is not a technology failure. And I'm not talking because I've just moved to the CTO role, to be honest. I'm talking because we see this on our orgs, across the orgs. We're using lots of AI tools. We have worked with lots of clients. We have trained them. We have credentialed them. The tools are generally performing as expected in the pilots. The stalling happens when there is no clear baseline of improvement. And like they say, you can't make it bigger until you measure it. So the ownership of adoption has to move on, think through beyond the IT problems. Do you agree, Ben?
I do, and I think you're teeing up really interesting, right? Because again, it's not a technical issue, and it's things work well in the lab, but when you do it in the real world, right? Like you experiment in the lab, we call them pilots. It all works out great. When you expand and you try and go outside the pilot, while you're bringing in a broader set of users, like we said earlier, those different roles will use that AI differently than what you saw in your pilot. And if you're not taking that into account, right? And if you're not setting up different ways of measuring things and that governance, right? Look at the interesting things here, right? Like productivity gains, right? Yeah, okay, that's good. All right. Being able to do things better, faster, right? Ooh, now you're getting some ROI. Competitive advantage from AI native workflows. Man, I tell you, so many companies roll out the technology, right? And they go, maybe we're going to do some role-based training, and they get that, but they're not changing the workflows. And the workflows happen at the teams level and across teams, right? Dave and Ben, they have, the right level of access to the AI tools that the company has rolled out. They have been effectively, skilled up on what is AI and how is AI used in his role, as a CTO versus mine, which is more sales and marketing. But we didn't redesign our company's workflows. That's one of the missing things. When people rolled out Office 365, right? No one ever thought about redesigning workflows. It's like, hey, it's a new version of PowerPoint,
Yeah,
right? It's a new version of Word. Look, it has spell checking. No one ever said, well, this changes the way I do my job.
yeah.
Yeah, it actually changes the way you work with others, in their jobs in that corresponding workflow. So
Yeah.
take me through. I like this next slide because I can see the next slide coming up. I'm the one controlling it.
Absolutely, man. And like
What
you
about
mentioned,
this?
if you remember that, you just sent the whole LinkedIn post, made a summary, notebook LLM it, had a podcast version for it. That's where, the things are, the workflows, the use cases, right? And then we'll share a small story and then we can kick off the slide. When AI doesn't scale, it doesn't fail, but it simply never gets the chance to the creating value.
It
That's the problem.
stalls.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. It doesn't fail. Yeah, it just you get stuck,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, exactly.
And what winners do differently, AI do not treat it as one time deployment like with rollout an IT. It's an ongoing ownership. They don't just deploy AI, they design adoption. They treat AI like an operating capability, and I'm going to use some of the power words like when you're using. It's an operating capability which we need to align. And why it is important, because defining a government standard will give you the safe AI uses. And we are actually talking about ethical use cases, having the guardrails, like Ben has mentioned previously as well. A measurement which is trying to the right use cases. That means, hey, you're not solving everything. We are looking for better, faster, cheaper solution, but you're actually tapping into the problems which is the need of an hour. So the focus will shift from who has access to AI, from which workflows we are going to change. And that's where you will move to the next big wave of baseline to an accelerating the behavior to measuring an outcome, and then you scale it to the next level. That means AI scales when it's run like a business system, not when it is you know treated as one feature or a tool only.
Yeah. No, no. Let me take you to the next slide. I'm going to tee it up for you and the audience, right? Because this is all about momentum and acceleration versus getting stuck and stalled, right? Like things don't fail, they just don't change. If they change, they don't change fast enough and they don't change at a deep enough level to actually, justify the investment that was made. I love this quote on the left. Adoption decays without a system, right? The system, a systematic approach, you're never done being ready for AI is what I tell people, right? Just look at, ChatGPT and Microsoft Copilot, two of the leading Gen AI tools, constantly improving, right? How do you get that mindset, right? Satya at Microsoft are saying it's a growth mindset from an individual point of view. How does a company get a growth mindset in terms of I always need to be moving this thing forward? It needs to be becoming a habit. So take us through, like we talked about, it's not a technical issue. So it feels like, Dave, it's more of a people issue. Well, what's one of the challenges when it comes on the people journey side? What's this
Absolutely.
slide
So,
about?
like the slide is saying that, why AI training alone breaks down? Because, training is important. Absolutely. See, we are in the age of lifelong learning. And, Ben and I use lots of tools in and out. We're experimenting almost 24 cross 7. We are wired with the tools, and I'm sure you all are as well, right? The training by itself does not change how work gets done. That's
Uh,
the biggest problem. Uh, what does it change is that, hey, it is giving you a nudge, high training attendance. We are talking about experimentation of AI tools. We are talking about slowly and gradually it's fade away. We are talking about moving back to the same old stuff. We don't want to solve it for a day or a week. We want to solve it for a longer workflows remains unchanged during the entire, only small to a bigger adoption project. So industry research also is showing, that knowledge is not equals to behavior. Old habits persist and no feedback loops These are the three key ingredients that says, only a small pilot fraction of an organization achieves the deep repeatable AI integration because they don't reinforce. So the reinforcement is the key of anchoring and moving from awareness to creating a system-wide behavior.
I love this, right? Like we know this, right? Generic training, even training doesn't change, right? Your behavior just because you know it doesn't mean you're actually gonna apply it and stuff like this. And I think change the way that I work, you're gonna force me to change, right? And so you know what? I'm gonna take over this next slide because I like this slide that's coming up, right?
Awesome.
Um, this notion of um, moving from simply having access to the tool to having an impact from the tool, right? People know when and how to use AI. Got to have that. That's foundation. You got to force them to change the way they work. It's the workflows, right? It's probably one of the biggest things when I talk to companies. I'm like, okay, so how are things going? They're like, man, we rolled this out. Everyone played with it for a little bit, but then they went back to their old way of doing things. I met with one company and they said, yeah, we rolled out Microsoft Copilot and they're using it. They're using it to transcribe meetings. So it all looks good, right? Usage is up. They're using it multiple times a week. They weren't changing the way they're working. And that's the workflows, right? And then the third one was, um, with this, we got to put some guardrails in place, right? We got to put not just policies, right, but governance, right? And that will also help us understand how we think about the value of things, right? Like I said earlier, the fact that I'm using Microsoft Copilot to record and transcribe meetings counts as usage. It's not changing the impact, right? The impact often, if you start looking at the workflows and time saved and things like this, now you're getting into something a little bit more, interesting, right? Dave, I mentioned this before, but I really always think of this as two journeys, right? When you're going down the AI
Yeah,
path, right? It's
yeah,
an AI readiness path, right?
yeah,
It's the path is made up of two journeys, right? You got the people journey, right? What does that mean, right? You got to get people literate. What is AI,
yeah,
right? Just basic prompting and stuff like this. Then there's this notion of fluency, and I love this word fluency because the way people talk to AI, right? And some of these tools you literally can talk to them, but the way you interact with them is like learning a different language, right?
yeah,
I'm a Canadian, right? So in theory, I'm bilingual. I know English and French. I have to become fluent, right? Fluent in my role, right? And then once I go from literacy to fluency, I start using this and I start getting more sophisticated. I start understanding, where it works well for me, where it doesn't work as well for me, different use cases, like I said earlier. Now I'm going into mastery, right? So that's the people journey, right?
yeah,
Literacy, fluency, and mastery. Corresponding to that is the org journey. And I think this is where people have to change the way they think. The people side, we've done training forever, and it's I don't know, level one, level two, level three, kind of, right? I mean, literacy, fluency, and mastery is a little bit better because it starts to incorporate that notion of fluency varies by role, right? But in the org journey, likewise, they're going down a path. And it's not just about adopting. Adopting is, it can be as simple as the number of licenses that are being used versus the licenses being bought, right?
yeah,
How do you adapt, right? How does the organization adapt? This again, I'm beating the horse on this, right? Workflows, right? Workflows at the team level, team use cases, right? How do the people inside the team and across teams, how are they adapting, right? How do we change the work? This is not going to happen on their own, right? Organizations are notorious for inertia, right? No one ever wakes up and says, "Hey, I want to change the way I do my job today." Like I want to
Yeah.
go from something I know really well to something that I don't know really well. You have to put in these changes in the workflows. You have to think about their use cases and how AI can change that workflow. And then the last one is this notion of acceleration, which is, you know what? We roll this out from a pilot to multiple teams to all teams. We learn best practices along the way. And now we can scale this thing. And scaling doesn't always just mean scaling to a bigger group. You've already rolled it out to everyone. Scaling in terms of it becomes repeatable, right? It becomes, like you said earlier, Dave, that operating
Yeah.
model that people
Absolutely.
can focus on, right? Does that
And
make
like
sense?
Ben, they have mentioned, McKinsey didn't hire 25,000 agents. That means what? Hey, they are not hiring agents. They're actually aligning the accelerate part. The teams are moving for adopt to adapt. I'm really not good at
Come on,
explaining
Dave. Adopt,
that.
adapt, accelerate. There's
So
all A's.
the mastery is only going to come when you have an acceleration, and acceleration will come only when you have a mastery, right? So Ben is rightly mentioned. I love it, Ben. I really love that slide. Yeah.
I mean, this kind of summarized. I actually forgot I had this slide, right? Which is, what happens when only one of the two journey moves ahead,
Yeah.
right? The easiest part is, doing what we've always done, right? We train people to deploy the tools, right? You're only moving so far down the people journey, the org journey, right? What's happening? Why are people, stalling, right? Why are they getting stuck, right? Because you're not thinking about the way that people do their daily work. You're not thinking about the workflows, the use cases, and you're not changing the way you measure things and the way that you govern things, right?
Yeah.
And governance, it sounds like a soft, squishy thing. It's one of those things that as you start to really change, you start to adapt, right? The governance puts in those guardrails, right? Because now you're moving from people playing with it to people actually using it, right? And on the left-hand side, I love it, right? Everyone's
Yeah.
excited. They're like, oh, this new tool. They go play with it, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, it's not all that exciting. I actually don't really understand it. It doesn't seem to be all that useful. I don't understand the context.
Yeah.
Confidence drops, right? It just becomes, oh yeah, I have access to it, but I'm going to use it to help me in the old way, not the new way, right? So, with this, right, I often start thinking, I love one of the things we do here at Adoptify AI is helping people put this into a continuous, I call it an operating model, right? We actually call it adapt ops, right? Making uh, adapting a continuous operating model, adapt ops, right? Kind of like DevOps and RevOps, right? You have all these different things, and it comes from, you know, getting people ready, getting the teams ready from workflows, and then getting the organizational ready to maintain that constant state of readiness through governance and ongoing measurements. But this way it becomes repeatable, right? It becomes an ongoing journey as they continue to go through all these ongoing underlying technical changes. I know we got about 15 minutes left, right? And we got a couple of slides left. I want
Yeah.
to show people some actual examples and stuff. So Dave, I'm going to settle down. Take us through some of these slides so we can show people some examples of this stuff.
Absolutely. And these are the real data which Ben is sharing. And Ben, I really like the last slide that you discussed, and it completely connects with what we're trying to do. So you see, this is one of the pilot we did with one of our teams itself. So we have just pulled out the small chunk of licenses, 65 licenses. You see 4 weeks of activation plan. When you say, hey, 4 weeks of activation plan, that means what? We have already made sure that 98% of the people we are using the tools the way you should. That means technically you have saved 310 hours. And this is the Microsoft aligned algorithm we're using, which is a benchmarking standard. And you see the number when we had 4,838 Copilot actions were executed. That means every action that you're executing, which is with the Copilot, you will see that we have got some hours saved. And it's a direct ROI to a lot of productivity work you can do. So baseline activation, you can see from the small pilot itself within the smaller number, and like Ben has mentioned clearly, because it was structured, because it was with a framework, we actually can identify from baseline literacy to measurement of the dashboard and the outcome itself. So that means we have actually tried and set the mechanism in a place where we think about not only the workflows, all the use cases, but then you literally measure it. So you're actually making the measurement of what matters the most. And then what you're doing is,
I love this. Next slide, guys, is the dashboard. But let me let me just go through those bullet points, right? Because Dave, I think you hit the nail on the head.
yeah,
When I meet with many enterprise customers, right, and I meet with them, and not all of them are struggling, right? Many of them are you know, moving to scale and all the rest. But how many of them go beyond kind of those boot camps, right? Look at that role-based playbooks, right? Guys, that's workflows, right? Then you do workflow activation sessions. Let me show you how the new way is versus the old way. Let me show you the benefits. I'm not going to have you just self-discover it, right? I'm going to give you the playbook. I'm going to give you sessions to show you how to use these new workflows. And then you put in these guardrails and these prompts and best practices. But the usage dashboards, I love this stuff because one thing, at least on the technical side, is, you know, when you roll out these tools from a technical point of view, there's all kinds of measurements, right? The problem is, what is a good measurement to track, and what is an old, outdated measurement to track? So, Dave, take us through this, some of these screenshots.
absolutely. So this is the dashboard we are actually setting up for our clients to see their growth over the actual numbers. So we can literally pull out the data from the Microsoft tenant in the most secure way. And we are pulling out that data and putting on the dashboard so that you have a daily, weekly, monthly measurement of what's working. So this is just a glimpse. And what we are trying to show is, hey, which teams are actively using AI over week? Hey, which workflows are improving the outcomes? Hey, which teams are actually motivated and which teams really needs a nudge? So you are actually moving from an observable and measurable data, which you can literally optimize it on a daily, weekly, monthly basis so that you can measure. And the measure is extremely important because you're investing a lot of time. You want to also measure which use case they're investing a lot of time with as well. So you can see the numbers and you can easily identify that a shift from a continuous optimization would be the key. So leaders can see what to standardize, what to refine, and what to scale. So let's
I
see.
love this.
Yeah.
I love it. I love taking all these actions, right? Like you
Yeah.
interact, like in this case with Microsoft Copilot. There's all these interactions. Let's group the interactions together. Let's put the break down those interactions, and then as a leader, I can go and say, are they using the tool the way that
Yeah.
I thought they would, the way that I would want them to do it? If they're all using it to transcribe meetings, that's not very good. But if they're actually engaging in things like chats and things like this, now I can start to see it's just what it says, right? What's working, what isn't, and kind of, why. Now, again, we're, we're Adoptify AI, right? So we're getting into kind of a sales pitch, right? Like, hey, we can help you solve all these things, regardless whether you use us or not. It's the methodology that I like. So take us through this interesting, climb up the mountain is the way I view this slide, right?
Absolutely. And feel free to book a call with Ben and I, and we definitely want to chat it with you. Our team has shared the details as well, like you mentioned, how we can help as an Adoptify AI is. So most organization has the AI tools, but lack the adoption infrastructure. The adoption infrastructure is key to what we are seeing these pillars, right? So the core pillar is AI literacy. So everything starts with the literacy. If you don't have it, you don't want to go and start the role playbooks and templates. So, you start with the literacy, you move to the role-based playbooks, which is actually tying back to the job and task that actual users are doing, and then hey, you have the roles, you have the templates, they have all the roles that we have defined. We're actually pushing the workflows and the templates and the playbooks for each roles. You will start putting the guardrails, right? So you have a governance framework. What not to do is extremely important in the age of AI versus what to do as well. So you're putting the safe expansion so that the next step which you are trying to enable, which is a functional level workflows, becomes secure and role based. That means you're actually moving the ladder, and then you're actually going to the actual co-pilot activation kits. That means you're going to get what all different templates and the use cases you can use. And during this entire process, you'll see that we are actually providing the dashboards, which Ben has just shown before, and we have just talked through, so that while you are doing all the journey points, you have a continuous access of what's going on. So you're actually going to have insights. So this entire layer actually becomes an adoption layer for an enterprises, which is what missing. And like you mentioned, there is a lot of noise, Ben, but there is no structure around. And what Adoptify I actually tried has, put the structure. Hey, talk roles. Let's talk about the task. Let's talk about measurement. Let's talk about ROI.
Yeah, I love this because one, I mean, if you think about this as being a continuous AI readiness journey, kind of made up of these two journeys, right? The people journey and the org journey, then I think a lot of companies are struggling because they need a map. This is kind of a map, right? I mean, you're climbing up a mountain, but it's kind of a map and a series of things that you need to do. Now, a lot of what we're saying, it feels like in this session, Dave, is using Microsoft Copilot as an example, right? I mean, it's a good example. It's one of the more
Yep.
common enterprise tools. I love the fact that on that dashboard we showed earlier, it's actually tied into that customer's Copilot account, right? Their tenant, like it's pulling out all those actions and things like this, right? What's this mean? What's this ECIF thing mean? What's that? You say we're ESEF eligible partners. Dave, are you there? You look like you're frozen. Maybe he is frozen. All right. Well, I ESEF is a Microsoft funding program, Enterprise Customer Innovation Fund, I believe. And um, what that does is if you're rolling out your Microsoft Copilot licenses, you actually may be eligible for this type of funding because likewise they're worried that customers are not getting the full value out of their investment in their licenses. Many of the other technology vendors have the same thing, right? But I love the notion of this journey up the dashboard and all the rest. Now, if we go to the next one, right? Let's just talk about Microsoft Copilot as a concrete example, right? Because I hate this,
Yep. Hey
webinars or
Ben,
sessions where
just
it's soft.
just a small heads up. We have some of the questions as well. Maybe we would want to keep some time you feel, for
Yeah,
the folks. Yeah,
yeah,
perfect.
absolutely. So, Dave, we got a couple more slides through here. Do you want to run through these or do you want me to run through these?
Uh, Whatever you feel best. I mean, we let's talk about the Copilot activation. And meanwhile, do we want to talk about some of the questions that we had parallelly as well? So we have a question from the team, which says, hey, do you guys support the consulting in Spanish language? We are definitely going to come back to you on this. So I'm going to reach out with the team, Ben, or do you want to address it right now?
No, no. I mean, I would do two things. One, there's a lot of chats going on. Most of them
Yeah,
are trying to answer one-on-one because they're so specific.
yeah,
Uh, uh, but let's just flip through some of these things in terms of
awesome.
one, you guys are going to get a copy of this, right? So you can have a look at it, right?
Yeah,
Um, I just wanted to break out the fact that whenever I work with customers, they're like, look, just give me some easy package solutions that I can kind of customize, right? And
yeah,
one is, give me a quick start, right? Just get me on the right path, right? And then look, I've already done a lot of this stuff. Get me out of the pilot stalling, right? I'm stuck in a pilot. How do I get out of that, right? Let's accelerate you out of that. There's another package and then it's like, look, I'm good, right? I'm rolling it out to multiple teams. Now I need to make this a scalable, repeatable part of my organization's DNA, right? We call it an operating model, right? There's three easy packages um, that I know on the Adoptify AI side of things were done for customers as starting points. Every package you can customize,
yeah,
but they're based on where you are in that journey side of things. And then the biggest thing is, and Dave, I think you highlighted this is it's not a technology challenge, right? I mean, it's you got to roll it out. I mean, there's certainly best practices on technical rollouts, but it's this notion of making it scalable, repeatable, and operating model, right? That's what's holding people back from driving adoption. One is you got to get out of the pilot, right? You don't want to stall in your pilot, but you also need to go and get out of the next stage because you can get stalled or stuck at the next stage and the next stage. You're always going to get stuck if you don't think about this as an ongoing operating models, right? And when this happens, right, you kind of got, two choices, right? You stay stuck, right? Or you got to start to operationalize the AI side of things, right? I'm a big believer in 90 days, right? Whenever I meet with customers, look, what can we get done in 90 days? How do we start getting value, right? Because if it's a journey, the journey is a series of steps. Every step should have measurable outcomes. You're going into the step, you're going out of the step, right? It's a journey, right? But we often work with, companies who are like, look, I don't have a ton of money to spend on this high-end consultant, right? I don't want people telling me what to do. I want someone who's going to help me get it done, right? So, your options here is, what do you do? Right? You stay in the old way, right? Or you start thinking about things in a slightly different way. So, Dave, take us home, right? Here's some,
absolutely.
look, if you want to find out more, go to the website, send us an email and things like this. But take us home. What do you think people should do now?
Yeah, so I think this is very, very important. So, let's connect. We want to give you an isolated wins, the word they use, we want to use, we want to help you understand what you can talk through about the ROI, what's really becoming the friction or the resistance in the AI journey. And the most important part is, how you can operationalize AI. So all these questions we want to answer, and we want to make sure that everything that you have learned from the session, we can, have you the adopts ops, the white papers, the publications, a lot of constants are there on the side as well. And yeah, we like we have mentioned, we want to personalize it for you. So let's connect, understand where you are or where your journey is, and then it's going to help us help you to align how it can become the most impactful AI adoption process for you. So looking forward.
Yeah, let's make the journey work for every organization. Just like AI is needs to be customized to every role, the AI journey needs to be customized to every enterprise. All right, I know we're top of the hour. Wrap it up. Dave and Ben, we're stop talking now.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you. That was incredibly insightful. We have shared all the links to reach out to us. So I would request the audience if they have any questions, anything to discuss, please reach out to us. Otherwise, obviously, our team will be reaching out to you very soon. Yeah, moving and concluding the session, I would like to thank our speaker, and obviously, I would like to thank everyone who joined us today for investing their time and attention and for being such a great audience. Thank you once again. The recording and the takeaways will be shared with you via an email shortly, and as soon as the webinar gets ended, you will be receiving your participation certificate for the session. That's all from my end, Ben and Chintan. I think this is
Thanks,
the time.
everyone.
Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good one. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye bye.